Well, welcome to another episode of the Shadûf podcast. So I'm Dustin Harding, Head of Research at the Shadûf Institute, and this is Weston Smith.
How's it going? We're having fun.
We're having fun. We have as our guest today Clancy Stone. Really excited about that. We've been talking to her a little bit before recording. Really neat person.
Honor to have you aboard here on the Shadûf podcast.
Oh, you guys are so nice. Look at that. Feeling the love.
Clancy, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And you got all kinds of projects going on. And
Sure. Yeah, most definitely. So I currently am a business advisor at the Women's Business Center of Utah, where I work with women. And we do help men, but mostly our clientele is women to help them in the business journey. So anywhere from having an idea to opening a business or selling it, whatever they need. But before that, I served in the military as an officer, then went to corporate America. In corporate America, I was always the only woman at the table in operations, so it was super fun, a lot of challenges, obstacles, but moved from Houston about 7 years ago, and we just really fell in love with Salt Lake. And so currently after corporate America and all that, I had my own consulting business, which has turned into more of a nonprofit type. I mean, it's for profit, but I really don't make money because I travel internationally just to help other women organizations. While my husband and I are now finally figured out our true passion, and it's this food truck that we're doing called Shrimpies, and we focus on food from the Gulf Coast.
Ooh, Gulf Coast.
Sounds good to me. Can we just spend the rest of the podcast talking about food?
Oh my gosh, right?
Like
coconut shrimp and spicy shrimp sandwiches and
located in Salt Lake, obviously.
yes,
So.
yes, until we have global domination.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll have to make it down there.
Yes.
And, it sounds delicious.
We'll make it down there, or you'll expand and come to us, right?
Oh, that's ideal. That's the ideal scenario right there. So happy to have you aboard. In our last episode, we were talking about recognition programs that organizations do, and kind of the flaws behind the typical recognition program. And so a lot of the research that we're bringing into this episode stems from that.
It's been this cool progression. It's like, it's tough. I mean, we kind of want to package things up nicely for our listeners, but it is also kind of a complex problem where we're taking like one bit of research leads to another, which leads to another. And so we're happy to have you here, because this is kind of like more of the marketing side.
Yeah.
Like the recognition stuff that we've talked about in a previous episode, that's more for like sales and
management.
Yeah. So this is perfect for like marketing, and particularly influencer marketing, right, Dustin?
Yeah. What we're looking at, just to kind of recap a little bit from prior episodes, is social comparison is like a huge issue that our society is facing right now. And a lot of recognition programs where organizations may feel like they are successful, they're actually demotivating most of their workforce. And it's by highlighting these individuals who have kind of outlier accomplishments, success.
Right.
You're forcing regular people to compare their abilities to that, and it actually decreases their confidence and demotivates. And so we talk about ways to go around that.
And people do this even on a subconscious level. But if you invite the comparison, then it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
Now, Clancy, I'm sure you integrate influencers into your marketing and into your business advising for other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think there is this perception with influencers and business owners that if they just get that one like Kardashian influencer, they're going to be set for life. And on a smaller scale, we have found that people are actually more successful if they get those influencers who have like 8,000 to 10,000 followers. To grow their base and to get better exposure and to build collaborations, because, they're more organic and authentic to their brand, right? Yeah. And they're really engaged. I mean, we get to that 2 million mark of people, it really becomes a money machine. And so that ability to connect.
So some of the research that we've been looking at, and we've kind of discussed with Mitch Murdoch we had in our live event, he kind of mentioned this thing as well, where you have these these outlier, like amazing influencers, and then you have these somewhat, like they still have thousands of followers, mid-range influencers, right? And he mentioned that same thing, that a lot of times you can have more success with these individuals. Right. And part of it may be their authenticity to the brand.
Like you said, the money machine. Right?
Yeah. I think it's though too. Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think it's also too, it's still at the 8,000 to 10,000 follower level. They're not into the spectrum of needing support from others, so they're still doing it. So I think that's why it's so successful for people to collaborate and to really draw in who they are. Because I have a good friend that is an influencer and a famous yoga instructor, but on the backside, I mean, smoke and mirrors, she always highlights her and her 3 kids out of New York City, but she has a nanny. She gets professional photos. Her dad's like one of the #1 surgeons, doctors in the country, comes from privilege, is married to one of the Wall Street dudes. And so it's like the ability to seem like, hey, I'm a mom that does yoga and I travel the world and does, there's so many moving parts behind the scenes. And I think that's what people don't realize, the thousands of dollars that go into that, or people of privilege who are able to do this because they have a safety net of their spouse.
I think some people don't realize that, but I think it's becoming something that more and more people do realize, that that's what's kind of going on behind the scenes. And
as more people try it, they're like, oh, the reality is something different.
Right? I want someone to show me the influencer who is a mom, who has a full-time job, who has a clean house, and she does it herself, and she cooks, and she washes her own car. Because I will tell you this, from what I do, and now that COVID, we're all in the home together, my house is is a nightmare.
So we've run several studies, and what's interesting is, so you have the mid-range influencers, but what we've been comparing is like mediocre people that aren't even like mid-range influencers. These are like people that just have, a few hundred followers, versus high-end influencers. Let me show you. I'm just going to share this screen so you can see, and then I'll describe it.
We'll describe it for our listeners.
So here we ran a study. This was a survey, but unbeknownst to the participants of this survey, it was actually an experiment. So they were asked to go through these Facebook posts. We just had a bunch of random posts. And they came across this, which they only saw one version of this one post. This is a post, somebody's trying to sell skirts that they've kind of bundled together, like a typical like influencer thing.
Product
thing. So these 2 posts, they're identical. The only difference is we just changed the number of likes, the number of comments, different things like that. So you have this high-end influencer who has 27,000 likes, 1.6 thousand comments, and then
thousands of shares.
Thousands of shares. On the flip side, you have this post that has 55 likes and 16 comments, which is still kind
drastically,
of drastically different, right? And then afterward, we asked them questions about this, and one of the questions that we asked about this post in particular is we asked them, these were all female participants, we asked them to imagine that they went to the link and we showed them a series of skirts and asked how much they'd be willing to pay for each skirt. And this is the totals. What we saw is like the typical influencer, participants were willing to spend $45 on the skirts. But for the non-traditional influencer, just a regular person, they were willing to spend about $54 for the skirts.
So $10 is a huge difference.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so we got really excited. This was one study where I'm like, is this really going to work? Like, because we influencers are, if they have so much more followers, then intuition, you'd think like, oh, then that would establish that these are good products and people would want to pay more for the skirts, but we get the exact opposite. And a lot of this research that we've been looking at looks at like kind of what you said. So you may be an influencer based on likes. You may have like the image of this perfect person. My house is perfect. My makeup is always perfect. Everything's in order. And so what we wanted to do is kind of test, like, okay, we looked at likes and we compared influencer likes to like just like a normal person likes, But what we wanted to do is say, okay, does the same thing happen if we look at this like model influencer versus regular person and likes? Like, how do those all correlate together? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So here's this next study. So it was the same thing that we did the last time, except now there's 4 groups of people.
Split it into 4.
And just like before, there's either high likes or low likes. Then what we had like this, it's like a model, like a model influencer.
Right.
And then we had just a normal person like influencer.
Which is like almost like just like a selfie snapshot type
Yeah,
thing.
like
You
a
can see
selfie
the
snapshot.
quality of photo, like the quality of the photo of just like, hey, regular person here talking about something I love versus someone who obviously made sure the lighting was perfect
Probably
and their
took like
hair
an
was
hour
perfect.
and a half.
Right.
But so what you get is you have like the model version that has high likes versus average likes, and then you get like the typical person that has high likes and regular likes. So we asked the same question at the end of that survey, and pretty much it was all about the same for 3 of those conditions. So they were willing to spend $40 to $45 if there was any like high influencer part to this. So either there were high likes, or it was like a model, or there were high likes and it was a model. There weren't really any statistical differences between those 3 groups. The only one that stood out was the regular person with regular likes. In that condition, they were willing to spend $55.
Okay.
So it was so
So
that's,
here again, it's a $10 difference.
Yeah, that's a make or break you if you're looking at a small business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that culturally, like what you were saying, is we have this focus on being like perfect or having like the perfect influencer, when really like being authentic and being real is so much more important.
Right.
I think people can kind of smell the fake, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Well, it's like even when I work with business owners and they want to emulate someone that they've seen their perfect Instagram and all of that.
Right.
And I always encourage them, I'm like, look, trust me on this. It's really hard for them to trust that. Show pictures of you, your team, what you're doing. And so one of my clients, she was in the health industry, and she was her brand.
Yeah.
Like she's a nurse and all of these things. And, branding and looking clean was really important to her. She had a list of stock photos. I'm like, don't use those. Highlight you, highlight your team, show what you're doing in the field. And so, you can encourage as much as possible, but people have to make their own decisions. And so she started with stock photos, and I always like watch my clients as, they grow and
Sure.
and then like months later, she reaches out to me and she's like, so guess what? We're at this event and I took pictures of me and my team and posted it. And that one picture of us got more traction, got more followers, got more engagement than any other. And I'm like, yeah, it's a true thing. People want to see you, what you're doing in it, not a stock photo. You can't trust that.
Right. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That would be like, probably for you, that would probably feel pretty rewarding. Not in like a I told you so kind of way, but just like, as you watch people that you...
I'm like, yeah, I know my stuff. That's
There you
validation.
Listen to Clancy, you guys.
It's just so frustrating in business overall, especially when you have small business owners here in Utah, because they can feel defeated before they even start, because we praise, corporations, right? Like Jeff Bezos and all of these types of, or look at the tech companies here. But what people don't realize is here in Utah, the reason those people get those opportunities and those corporations is because we have a super strong foundation of small business owners. At the end of the day, their practices, they're not different. If you follow a process through to the end and trust and lean into that fear, you're going to be successful. I mean, for my husband and I right now, when we want to launch our business, and we literally have our food truck in my driveway right now. And COVID happened. And it's like, and so everyone's like, so you're not going to do it? I'm like, no, we're going to do it. And they're like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm like, we just have to pivot, right? So it's an opportunity to test it out and scale it down, which kind of worked out for our advantage of where we're at, but you just have to push through that.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just find ways to adapt. You find things that work. You find solutions to the problems, and that's kind of what we're all about. So.
But I love how you are building off of this. I'm a huge process person. That's a big part of my background. And so I love how you're documenting the scientific element of process and data, because it's so true. And people go into this like, I feel like this is my target audience, or I feel, and I'm like, if you feel these things, let's put some data to it.
Right.
Yeah. Going on gut instincts is fine as long as you check those gut instincts with data and research, right? You could be totally on, but you could be totally off. And this type of research, I mean, these studies, like each study is like, I don't know, a couple $100 and takes like a day, and so it's a cheap thing that people can do before they lay everything out and
start dumping money into it. Well, it's the same thing. Apply that to what we've just been talking about. Well, the influencers, not only is this better, but it's probably good for entrepreneurs that you advise, because it's inexpensive for them.
And people think, though, it's just like with influencers, though, there can be this collaboration where you don't give it all away. And I think when people go through the process, because I've had clients who launch with one product and collaborate with other influencers. And one thing I do at the Women's Business Center is I'm super big on supporting local and women businesses, right? However, if you are phony, I will bust you out in my trainings. And so I have seen really good social media influencers here in Utah, but when I've used their services, they're terrible. And then I'll test them out. Like, okay, so what's the client experience like? Okay, if it's a bad experience, then what do they do about it? Or if it's a good experience, what does that look like? And perception here, it's crazy town. And it's really hard to get people to trust in, if I have a really good product and I give a really great client experience, people will pay for that. Yeah. And so, but they do. So,
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like people want that. Like they crave it.
But I think that's why we have so many bad restaurants in Salt Lake City, because people go to people here they know and like first, and then they go, oh, is this a good product? And we have a lot of bad restaurants.
That's the afterthought. That's too bad.
Well, that's neat. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Been awesome having you on this podcast.
That was a great, that was a great discussion. And
gosh, it went by
sounds
so
like
fast.
You're doing awesome work.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of amazing. Salt Lake, even during COVID, is one of the best places in the country for entrepreneurs. So if anybody listening is interested in launching a business, still you can trust in that and be successful during COVID-19.
There you go.
And get awesome food truck food.
And then you can get some awesome
I'm
shrimp.
gonna have to bring some down to y'all.
That'd be awesome.
That would be fantastic. And we're excited to be able to have your real world experience and to kind of collaborate with you on this. So that's awesome.
No, you guys were great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you much. And
Thank
we'll catch you later.
All right, we'll let you go.
Bye.
See ya.